just like that, we are back with another episode of the RUCKCast. Hi, Jim. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, John. How are you doing?
Oh, I can't complain. And we have a third person with us again. This is like we're getting way too serious, man.
It is. We're gonna have to stop this. Well, we missed a week because I was sick, so we're not that serious. Let's be honest with you. I didn't roll out of my deathbed to record, so we're only kind of serious at this point.
Well, I guess we should introduce this person
Well,
since
it kind of fits because he is not serious at all. So this is going to be
not at all. This is why it's a good thing we don't have the video feed for the podcast. Unfortunately, this is just for our benefit. We're laughing because he's hamming it up. But with us today is the CloudPath PLM himself, Mr. Christopher Mohammed.
Good day, everybody. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah. Is that my title now?
I was going to say, should we call him Christopher? Should we call him Chris? Should we call him Simo?
I think it's funny. Whenever I go to any meeting, there's like 6 Chris's. So I always introduce myself as Christopher. So when they say Chris, I know not to pay attention. But as soon as they say Christopher, I have to perk up and go, I'm sorry. Can you please repeat the question?
Because you weren't paying attention. Yeah. That sounds about right for the Christopher we know and love. How you doing, Chris? Oh, sorry. How you doing, Christopher?
Oh, yeah, by the great. Yeah, just peachy here. It's all of a sudden it's winter again in Toronto, which is interesting. I thought, what's the saying for March? In like a lion, out like a lamb, or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. It's yesterday we had thunder showers, lightning, and a snowstorm all in the span of about 45 minutes.
Nice. That sounds about right for spring.
Yeah. No, is that for you guys as well?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
This has been a very rough couple of months. I mean, it's just like, because normally like I'm in Denver, and which is conveniently enough really close to where the original CloudPath office used to be. And it's been so much snow. Stop it, Chris. It's been
why? What is wrong? This is a serious podcast, Jim.
Yeah. So anyway, so CloudPath. So
that took 10 minutes to write, by the way, and I wrote it backwards for you guys. I don't know if you guys saw it, but sorry, go ahead, Jim.
What? I thought you had a brand new camera that didn't need things written backwards. What type of camera did you get there?
You just need a button on the camera.
Which one, sorry?
I think you just have a button on the camera that makes it not mirrored.
That probably is true. I don't know how to use computers.
Well, it's funny because the Marshall amps in the background there behind you, I can read that, and they're not backwards.
No, they're not.
No, never been.
So was it backwards when I held up the sign?
No.
Oh, I did it, guys. Sure? I did it.
Are you sure you wrote it backwards?
Are
you sure?
It took forever.
Are you sure of anything at this point?
All I can tell you is
20 minutes.
There is no drug testing on the show, so no judgment.
All right. Where were we?
CloudPath. You have something to do with CloudPath.
How many clips are we going to get out of this podcast?
Hopefully one.
Well, that sounds like work, and we're not about the work. So yeah, just one. So CloudPath, what you might know something about CloudPath. Why don't you, for people who don't know, let's start there. People who don't know, which includes a specific person that we were talking about earlier.
Who I'm going to.
Well, yes, maybe. Sure. We could be. We should actually. No, I'm going to send this link to him. But anyway, for people that were in Brazil this week, the week of we're recording, and don't know anything about CloudPath, why don't you go ahead and give us a little intro to what is CloudPath?
Yeah, great question. We purchased CloudPath. Ruckus did. I think it's like 7 years ago. And it was originally meant for secure onboarding, guest and BYOD onboarding. And the product is really taken shape to be the ability to provide identity on the network, policies, and role-based access control. So as a user or as a network administrator, knowing who's on the network, what policies should be applied to them, what roles should be applied to them, is what CloudPath could actually provide. I look at I've been with Ruckus 10 years, and we didn't have anything like this when I first joined the company. And you would have people join the network, and they would ask, well, who's on the network? And you were like, well, that's up to your Radius server, or if it's a PSK, we're going to look at it by host names. And then we bought CloudPath, and then we thought, look, we can actually provide identity for users and devices that are connecting to the network. And then we could take that identity, and now we can provide policies based on that identity. So if you're a student, faculty, even IT administrators, we can say, hey, you can have a policy based on your role on that network. So giving people the privileges that they only require is something that, CloudPath can do. And then just not on wireless, or maybe just not on TLS, or, we can provide those policies and actually tag that user and all the devices they're using to provide those policies on any type of network. So if you're wired network, wireless, TLS, PSK, MAC-based authentication, PEEP, we can provide the same policies throughout the entire network that you're joining. I see you guys typing away there. So let's.
Well, yeah, we're talking to people.
There's video here.
Well, now so here's I mean, we're actually trying to figure out like a lot of what you said, right? You said identity. So
this is 30 minutes just in what I said. So this is
right.
good.
So you said identity a lot, right?
He's
yeah.
Canadian. So.
Well, right. Okay. What's the American word for identity?
Oh. but seriously,
I think as Americans we're having an identity crisis, but that's a podcast topic for a different day.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to the identity thing, because this is always fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So you were talking about like providing an identity, even though I'm being onboarded.
Yeah.
So as the gym, dumb guy end user, how does that look to me? How do I experience this? Oh, I'm being provided an identity, even though I'm being, I mean, how do you tie those two things together to where, I roll in, I'm Jim, I'm either a brand new student, brand new employee, what have you.
Right.
How does that initial interaction look like for me as rolling in on day one of being in the organization?
Yeah. And this could be something that happens day zero, right? So even before you actually roll into the your place of work or school, you can go ahead and actually go through CloudPath workflows to actually get onboard those devices. So think of it as maybe as a student showing up to campus for the day one, right? So maybe on break they get a package saying, hey, welcome to campus, congratulations that you're going to be joining the school in September or whenever the school year starts. If you want to get yourself online before when you show up that your device just works, go ahead and do this. And here's the link to do that. And here's your credentials, however those are presented to the end user. So as an end user, I would click on a link, or if I was on campus, connect to an onboarding WLAN or plug into port, and I'm automatically redirected to that onboarding page. I would then be presented with, say, something like an acceptable use policy. And then within CloudPath, we can tie into any type of identity providers that you want to use. So if it's Google, Azure, on-prem Active Directory, some other OAuth or SAML provider, CloudPath can create that connector for you. So you would go ahead, enter in your credentials, username, password, whatever those are. CloudPath on the back end would go out, validate that you're you, provide whatever group membership, other identity information that we need to, and then go ahead and provision that device to get on the network. And, using certificates is one way, but if you want to use something like a Ruckus DPSK or MAC-based authentication or PEEP, we can also do that as well. So the ability really to go out and grab information from an identity provider and then present it to you. So as you use those devices, we actually know that it's, Jim's tablet or Jim's Windows machine or Jim's Roku device, whatever that's going to be. So now we're actually giving identity of that user and his devices on the network.
Okay.
So you're talking about end user devices and certificates and identities and things like that. How are we getting that cert to the end user device? How does CloudPath do that?
Yeah, if we're doing certificates, we can actually provision those devices within the workflow. And there's a couple different ways to do it. So if your device is, say, IT managed, right, and they have some type of MDM, or even it's tied into, say, Active Directory, we can automatically provision those devices without any type of user interaction. So if you have Intune or Endpoint Management System or Casper or JAMF or something else doing your MDM management, we can provision those devices automatically, right, with no user intervention. If it's tied into, say, Active Directory within CloudPath, you can build an MSI and then deploy those through some group policy object in Active Directory and automatically provision those devices. Now, if they don't fall into those two camps, if it's a user, it's a BYOD device, or even guest devices, if you want to do things like certificates, CloudPath will automatically onboard those devices. So as a user, you can go through a workflow, provide your identity, and then CloudPath will actually provision those devices with the certificates that are necessary to provide identity onto the network, as well as move your device to the secure network.
So I think this is a really important thing because with the introduction of 6 gigahertz, 2 years ago, has it been 2 years since we first heard and were promised 6 gigahertz stuff? But anyway, with 6 gigahertz, WPA3 is now this this big thing, because WPA3 is required in 6 gigahertz. And I know, Christopher, this is a conversation you and I have had in the past, is about the idea about, okay, we have to do WPA3. There is no open anymore. There isn't any of this other stuff. So we have to come up with either, an SAE connection, an OWE connection, or an enterprise connection. And I know for a lot of the people and customers that I talk to, part of their problem that they have is they go, we really want to go with like an ETLS, an 802.1x, actual enterprise type connection, but we don't know how to get the certificates onto all of our client devices. We have 1,000 devices or 10,000 devices or however many they have. And so this is always a question I field, is how do you build that? I just want to sort of ask the question again. Is CloudPath an answer to this? Is CloudPath an answer to where we say, hey, you know what? If, pushing into WPA3 and 6 gigahertz, if you really want to do this and you want to do it right, and your concern is, how do I get certificates onto my devices so I can run an ETLS network? Is this something that, can be stood up and then go, okay, everybody, we're now migrating to 6 gigahertz. So, now that the device, now there's no question about, does the device support it? Because if it supports 6 gigahertz, it has to support, WPA3. And I haven't heard of any device that's like, oh, well, we support OWE and SAE, but we don't support, enterprise. Is this a solution for that?
Yeah, that's a good point there, Jim. That every time we talk certificates, for some reason, it's this big scary thing.
It is,
and
it's not.
It's really important. Yeah, everyone gets like, well, I don't understand certificates, but talk to me about OSPF or something else, and right. I get that. But I'm like, well, really the goal was for CloudPath is really to make that as easy as possible, right? We understood that it was the kind of the gold standard for security using ETLS, but there required interaction to get those certificates on those devices, right? And CloudPath figured it out years ago how to make it as simple as possible. So putting those devices on the network is what CloudPath has done traditionally very well. Get the certificates on the device, move them to a secure network, and now with 6 gigahertz and WPA3 only, well, certificates becomes, almost mandatory for those enterprise devices on WPA3.
Love certificates.
Well,
as you eye roll certificates.
Well, I mean, how many times have you seen them being the problem, right? Expired certificates, wrong certificates.
Right.
Didn't get the certificates.
Right. Yeah.
So is that something, I mean, John brings up a good point. One of the scary parts about certificates is this idea that they expire.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, how many times have people gone to a website and it's like, oh, the certificate expired on the website. And
Well,
that's just,
I don't know what website you're going to. I may have an idea.
well,
It's a family show.
We especially weren't recording when we had that discussion earlier.
Mhm.
But, does that podcast too? That happens? I don't know.
It's like After Dark.
No. Okay. No. So HTTPS certificates aren't exactly the same. Are they the same thing? And this is the whole thing, is because it's just, and I think part of the problem with certificates is we just sort of throw this term around, right? Oh, it's a certificate. When you say stuff like OSPF, and John, just for your edification, OSPF is a routing protocol. I
know what it means.
He's not a switch. Yeah. He's not a switch guy. He calls every day. It's like switch questions from John is like, we need to have a whole podcast. Switch.
I know what OSPF is.
Okay. So anyway, but when you say OSPF, it's a very specific thing. I mean, everybody knows exactly what you're talking about. But when you say certificate, it's just, to me, it almost feels like this catch-all term, right? Oh, certificate. But what exactly does that mean?
Yeah.
So
different. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But the question, so there are different certificates, but then there's also the question of the certificates expiring. Is that, if I have CloudPath, maybe we should not have done cameras for this one. If we're
hamming it up down there.
After the week we had, we needed this.
So, all right, so let's go back to I'm a student at a school, university, K-12. I want to be a high school student because high school students know everything. So I'm a high school student. I know everything, and I'm coming into my second or third year, and my certificate is expiring. Is that also something that CloudPath can help me with? Or how do I make sure that my, as 17-year-old Jim who knows everything, doesn't actually know squat,
right?
Is that something that CloudPath can help me or help you as a school administrator with? You don't know. Okay.
No, that's CloudPath can definitely help with that, Jim. So when your certificate is about to expire, we can actually just let you know, hey, within 7 days or X amount of days, this certificate's about to expire. You can go back through the same onboarding that you did before and go ahead and get a brand new certificate. And even from a network administrator perspective, if they're dealing with certificates, we can actually say, well, Jim, you're a high school student, you're allowed to onboard, say, 2 or 3 devices. And you can choose those 2 and 3 devices. So, what's the refresh cycle on a phone these days? Is it every, I'm still on my iPhone, like 6S. So, and if you think I'm joking, it's right here with me. Here's my iPhone 6S, right? And I'm still using this thing. But what's the refresh cycle? Every, new phone comes out, and even though it still does the same thing, you gotta get the new one. So if it's every, say, 2 years or 3 years, that's probably within someone's high school career. We can give certificates for X amount of time. It could be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. It could be, a week. It's up to the network administrator and how they want to do that. But if it does get expired or they get a new device, they can definitely go back through the workflow and just re-onboard those devices and get a new certificate, and it'll be good for X amount of time. And if they have, the ability to say, hey, network ability to say, you can onboard, 2 devices, you choose those 2 devices. They can go back through the workflow and offboard a device or revoke a certificate and then onboard their new device. And what's cool about CloudPath as well is that if the certificate is actually revoked and it shows up on the network, we can actually let the network administrator know that, hey, that revoked certificate's on the network. Hey, Jim came back, and Jim isn't allowed. I'm picking on Jim here. Jim's not allowed on the network for X reasons. He shows up and tries to authenticate. Well, let's let the network administrator know and say, hey, Jim is showing up. He shouldn't be on premise or shouldn't be connecting.
Yep. that's a really interesting use case that I'd never thought of. Because, I mean, I heard a story one time about some students who went to their school and they vandalized it.
Ooh.
You know, it was at night or the weekend or whatever. And they figured out who it was based on, they went back to the Wi-Fi logs and they were like, oh, these devices automatically connected. And so if you were to have a student that you had asked not to come back for any number of reasons, most of the time they're not, even though they think they know everything, they're not smart enough to realize that, hey, my device is going to remember the network. And as soon as I see it, I'm going to try to connect. And if I haven't done anything on my side, then having that, especially an email that says, hey, this revoked certificate has now appeared with a date and timestamp, that's actually a really, really critical piece of information that school administrators could actually do something with. That's an actionable item now. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, this person showed up on our campus. And we could then go back and say, hey, it was in this area because this is the AP that they tried to onboard with. So
yeah, I mean,
actually, and in today's day and age, that's actually a really good feature.
yeah, imagine trying to catch somebody whose, you know, device showed up as Android XLMNOP, you know, or Christopher's iPhone.
Right.
Right. Maybe there's only one Christopher iPhone, and lots of Chris iPhones. So you probably would
But we're going
probably be able to catch me.
We're going to call yours CMOs just because.
Well, I'm now going to change all of my device names to Christopher's whatever.
Yeah.
I want to see Christopher's whatever next time you're sharing a device. But so taking a little bit of a pivot. So we've got certificates, and it's, you know, being able to control what devices are on based on whether they have it or not is, you know, I think everybody kind of knows that. And like Jim said, that's a neat feature. But so what about policies? How do we control what, you know, what's the deal with that with CloudPath? What can we do with CloudPath relative to user policies?
Yeah, so since we're already connecting to that IDP, so we're grabbing information from Google, AD, whatever IDP they want to use, we'll support, you know.
And an IDP is
an identity provider. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you got it. John got that one.
Well, I didn't at first. That was one of the things we were telling me. What the hell is IDP? Context.
We need a acronym glossary to
we do
on just before just start rhyming things off. And then we'll play some type of glossary bingo on the side. We'll side game this.
All right. So
anyways.
Yeah. So as that user went through the workflow, you know, if they're using certs, I think we've been using certs a lot, but you know, we could do Mac-based authentication, DPSK, you name it. Yeah. But yeah, I don't disagree with your grunt there, Jim. But so we're using certs or DPSK or something else. You know, since we've understood that user and grab things like user groups, we can go ahead and base policies on that. So if you wanted to say, well, you're a student, you belong in your, you know, this VLAN when you're at this location or at these hours, or you have these certain ACLs or filter IDs, or if you want us to pass that information up to say your firewall, CloudPath can do that, right? So as Jim, you've onboarded, you know, 2 of your devices, and let's say you use certs on one of them, and then you use something like a Ruckus dynamic pre-shared key on your other one because it's you know, a gaming device in your residence. We can go ahead and, you know, we understand that it's Jim's device, and we can go ahead and build a role based on that, or you can provide a role based on that. And that could be VLANs, could be speeds and feeds, could be one of the 5,800 different radius attributes that we provide. CloudPath can return those for all those devices based on Jim's identity.
Now, are those policies that are built on the IDP, or are those policies that you build in CloudPath?
I mean, they're all policies built in CloudPath based on information from the IDP. So if you don't have to go, go ahead. Sorry.
So if you had, I mean, and I don't know enough about IDPs to be honest with you, but I mean, could you have a role, you know, and the student, teacher, administrator, you know, whatever type of role, could you have that defined in your IDP already?
Yes, you can define that in your IDP, but what CloudPath will do is understand that information and then pass back whatever attributes you want for that role to your switch, to your access point, to whatever method you're connecting to.
And of course, that leads us into another topic, which we 100% do not have time with, which is microsegmentation.
Yeah. Are you cutting me short? Is that what?
Well,
No.
Like, Christopher, you're a lot for 15 minutes already.
well,
No, that'll be a whole nother topic for a whole nother show.
But no, well, yeah. I mean, the reason why I don't want to go into that is because I mean, we could literally spend 30 to 45 minutes just on that topic. So.
Yeah, it's a great topic. Yeah.
But I mean, that's so you sort of build those in your IDP, but then you tell CloudPath, hey, from a network perspective, this is what it means when we return, this is a student.
Yeah, you got it. So imagine within, let's just take like Active Directory, right? So you're a member of the student group, right?
Right.
So as you've onboarded your device, we understand that Jim is part of the student group. So CloudPath will understand that, that group name for Jim is student versus John, who is, a teacher, maybe he's a member of the faculty group. Yeah. John's very happy with this.
That is actually my degree.
Yeah. Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Scary, actually.
So, yeah. So as John onboards his device, CloudPath understand that he has that group membership. Now, when John goes ahead and uses his devices on the network, either plugging, wireless, whatever it's going to be, we'll understand that John is a teacher. We'll understand that Jim's a student. How you've defined that role within CloudPath, maybe, John's filter ID is faculty. He gets these ACLs pushed down to him. He's allowed to access these things or not. CloudPath will do that for you. Same as you, Jim. As you're a student and you're using those devices on the network, basically your role-based access, your policy is essentially tagged to you and your devices. So we understand that John has these roles and these responsibilities, and he's using it on those devices. We'll tag those devices owning to John, and his hierarchical of membership is faculty versus Jim, who's using, his devices. They're tagged as a student, and these are his roles and responsibilities as well.
So I have a question. You mentioned also interacting with firewalls. So as me being the student, and if I were to try to say, get online and say, hey, I want to search for, weapons, is that something that is, you're saying this policy can be actually sent to the firewall where it goes, oh, Jim as a student shouldn't be allowed to research weapons, but John as the faculty would?
Oh, yeah, that's right. So those roles and those responsibilities, we can definitely forward to the firewalls through some proxy, through proxy. So you can build your rules out within those other mechanisms.
Right.
To say, hey, look, we know that Jim is a student. He's allowed to access the things. He's not allowed to access these things. And you can have as many roles as you want. So you could say, if you're in a K to 12 environment, maybe the upper schools are allowed, or upper classes are allowed to, or grades are allowed to access these things while the lower grades are not. We definitely can send all that information up to those firewalls as well. There's also, within CloudPath, there's also the ability to install third-party CAs. So a lot of these content filterings that are being used in K to 12 environments, they do require a certificate also to be installed on those devices. Within CloudPath, we can actually roll all that into the package for those devices. So as Jim, you onboard your device and you need that content filter certificate, we can actually roll that into the package as well and deploy that on your device, so that not only will you get your identity, but you also get a content filtered certificate to be trusted as well. So
interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's really, CloudPath is originally it was like secure onboarding, but there's just, so many different features that are available within the product. And we're still talking maybe about, 15% of the features of that product. And, I've been an SE previously, and I would always show CloudPath up, and there'd be, like 15 different features that we would talk about. We're talking about maybe two or three of those features of that product.
Cool. So if I was to deploy CloudPath and I wanted to know how it was performing, what it was doing, how it was working, is there any sort of metrics?
Yeah, that's we have metrics within CloudPath as well. So within CloudPath, we've got this great feature called traffic monitoring, and you can get a year worth of data in that. So and it can be as granular as minutes or as macro as a year. And they are things like radius off, how many people have accepted the AUP, accounting informations, all that is available within CloudPath. But also things like identity and auths and roles, all those things can be passed up to something that we call RUCKUS Analytics. So what's really important about CloudPath is I think that says R, Jim, which is maybe some type of pirate language. I'm not sure.
I'm trying to write backwards.
So what's great about CloudPath is, okay, we can give those identity, but if you want to figure out our connection tracking or analytics, anything that's happening in terms of incidences, we can enrich that information upstream and say, well, look, Jim is misbehaving, or maybe Jim is fine, yeah, or John, you got to flip it around, you got to mirror it, John. We can enrich that information that we're sending up to not just firewalls, but our own analytics platform, saying, if you want to look up all of John's devices, now you're not just looking at a MAC address. You can type in, his identity, which is John something or other. And then you'll get a list of all of Mr. Deegan's devices that are available. Are they behaving fine? Are they behaving poorly? Is there any risks associated with them? Is he connecting to the right network?
So
go ahead.
His identity actually populates up to like a RUCKUS Analytics.
That is correct.
So
that is correct.
Pretty cool.
Oh, that is nice. I didn't realize that and that's a key field, especially for people who aren't networking nerds. They're like, I just want to know what is John or what is Jim, because we know John's perfect. What's Jim?
What is Jim?
What is Jim?
Yeah, that's another podcast. Podcast 3, I think we're gonna call that one. But if you look at, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but so that identity that we all know then populates up to where it now becomes something you can search in an analytics.
Yeah, imagine going to your top talkers and just seeing a MAC address. I mean, such a what does this actually mean? Right?
Yeah, it doesn't. Nothing.
Exactly. So now we can say that, hey, Jim's device is performing bad in some sort of way within analytics, right? You can actually go ahead and get that information from analytics, and then maybe do something about it. Maybe you do revoke Jim's access, or maybe you just revoke Jim's access for that one device. And then when Jim onboards it, tries to go ahead and re-onboard his device, send a message over to the administrator saying, hey, Jim's trying to onboard that device again, or send an API call to a third-party system, or, even give Jim messaging saying, hey, this device is banned. You're not allowed to onboard this device. IT's been alerted. Prepare for incoming Titanfall or something. Lots of different ways to approach that too.
There's so many different questions I want to ask right now, because this is just fascinating to me, because in the world that we live in today, if you had a device that you could detect and be like, hey, we think this device is actually infected with a malware or something, because it's, it's doing some weird stuff that we don't, is a flag, right? Be like, hey, it's trying to communicate with, Russian servers, or is trying to communicate with some. No, this is a true story. This happened to me one time where we figured out a device was infected by the DNS names that it was looking up. It was sending all these DNS queries to some really shady, websites you would
crypto
never
mining.
Well, either crypto mining. No, they were command and control servers based in Russia. They were .ru web addresses, and it was like, wait a second. And we're like, there's no device on this network that should be talking to a server in Russia. So at that point, you could then actually you could send a message, be like, hey, we think there's a problem, with your device. You could then kick it off the network, and when they try to come back on, you could basically send them and say, hey, go talk to IT or go talk to somebody, because you have a problem on your device that we need, and we don't want you getting on there and spreading malware. And so, that's a really fascinating use case that I really wish we had more time to talk about. But
I had that, many, many moons ago. I was a network administrator, and, I remember a teacher, faculty, there was one classroom that was just performing some massive DOS attack to us. And it was basically flooding our FDB entry. And this is many, many years ago. And, Switch's forwarding database would just be full of, and hit the limit. And then that would just cascade through it. And I was able to figure out, which port was causing this. And you could, down that port, which is fine. However, they just go plug somewhere else in, and you're just, we're at the mercy of looking up a MAC address. I figured out what that device, actually, it was really hard to tell because there's just a bunch of entries in it, but you could tell what port it is, but you couldn't tell who the user was. I look at something like CloudPath. If I had that identity, the problem would be solved immediately. Right. Meanwhile, that faculty member would unplug his device and then just show up somewhere else. And here we are, bug hunting that stuff out. And it turned out to be an antivirus program that he downloaded off the internet, which was basically just malware and just wrecking our lives for, a couple of days. And then once I found it and he just admitted it to me, I was just like, you got to be kidding me, my friend. This is not great. But those were fun.
Yeah, I mean, having dealt with it before, I mean, getting everything in a single pane of glass to be able to tie all the identities together. I mean, sometimes it's crazy stories like that, and sometimes it's as simple as cert expired and they didn't realize it. And in past lives, you'd have to go look at a couple different logs to realize, okay, that's the MAC address, that's the error. They need a new cert, or their password.
Let me go search in syslog across 10,000 devices.
And I mean, as you get the proliferation of devices and users, I mean, it's not a 200. I mean, you could 200 users, you could have 1,000 devices. It's not. It's definitely anything that we can do to help, troubleshoot and improve the network is great. And I think we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg with CloudPath. So I hate to say this, but we're gonna have you back a few times, probably.
You hate to say it, or like that? Ouch!
You're gonna become like our third co-host.
Yeah,
you're gonna just be on every week.
Yeah,
so if we don't have anything else to talk about, we're just talking about CloudPath.
There you go.
You guys are gonna get real sick of me real quick. Let's.
I doubt that.
Same jokes every week. This is what's gonna happen. Hopefully, we get new listeners every week, and they'll be okay with it.
There you go.
I hope so. I think that's it for now, Jim. Unless I'm missing something, I hate to cut it short.
There's like you said, there's still so much that we could talk about, and I want to talk about, because it really is an interesting, fascinating topic. So, Christopher, hopefully you'll agree to grace us with your presence again in the future. And
next time we won't have video.
All right, we might actually stay on topic. But no, thanks for coming. It's been very fascinating. So thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for thanks for having me. And I really appreciate it. I was going to make some really bad joke there, but we'll just end it at this.
I guess that's my cue to hit the music and send this one home. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great one.
Thanks.
You as well. Thank you.